Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. We have just, of course, concluded our coverage of the FBI press conference in Utah, which gave us the latest on the developments of that murder that we all saw, Charlie Kirk, who died yesterday, speaking at Utah Valley University. Now let's give you the latest. Federal and state officials say they are making active progress in the investigation into the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. At a joint press conference, the FBI and Utah DPS revealed that a high-powered rifle believed to be the murder weapon has been recovered and is now being analysed at an FBI lab. Officials also confirmed they have video and images of the suspect, described as a college-aged male who blended in well on campus. Authorities also say that the shooter moved across a rooftop to a vantage point, fired, and then fled into a nearby neighbourhood. They're now analysing footprints and other imprints from the scene. The FBI says the broader community is not at risk, but is urging the public to come forward with any tips. The Utah DPS vowed that they will catch this individual. Okay, this has obviously been a developing story all day, and the world is reeling from this. We are now joined by Erik Solheim. He's the former Minister of International Development and Environment of Norway, and he joins us live from the Norwegian capital. Thank you very much, Erik, for joining us on the broadcast. This shooter is known to be still at large. The FBI and detectives from Utah have pleaded for evidence, video evidence, physical evidence, whatever the public does have. Of course, we have seen previous political violence in the United States, but what are your thoughts on how this investigation is going? And your initial response to that press conference that we just heard?
I'm pretty confident that the person who committed this crime will be apprehended and brought to a court. It's very, very hard for anyone to make anything like this and not being arrested. So I'm sure that will happen. But I think the bigger picture is that we are at a very dangerous point in American history. There's a lot of economic uncertainty, there's a lot of racial anxiety, there is a lot of inflammatory speech, and Americans can't really come together to fight this violence in society. I mean, weapons are so widespread that when you have inflammatory speech, it can easily turn into violence. And we have seen more violence, more political violence over the last period. And unfortunately, maybe even worse.
Yes, and Erik, obviously this is part of a pattern. I mean, political violence in America has been there since its foundation. However, young people in America recently have seemed to be at the center of it in 2025, and of course the 2024 election. We are actually creeping up on the anniversary of the Trump assassination attempt, which was perpetrated by a young person who was killed at the scene. And then who can forget Luigi Mangione, another assassination that can be seen as political also. And now we're being told by the FBI and investigators in Utah that this suspect is a young person who fit in at college age. What does that say about the feeling of young people in the United States right now, and the breadths that they will go to make a political message?
I think it's very dangerous that political leaders in America jump to conclusions before anything is known. Even the president has said that this was the act of the violent left. Well, we don't know. It may be, but we don't know. Elon Musk said the same. While on the other side, the Democrats in the Congress, they don't really want to come strong condemning this, claiming that other violent attacks has been as important or as bad as this. It's a very split society, very divided, and with a lot of guns. Look, if you go to the rest of the world, to Europe, to India, to China, it's not that everyone has a weapon in their home or in the bag. When you spread weapons like that, it makes society much more vulnerable. It's for sure possible to kill a person with a knife or even with your hands. Just it's much more difficult and much less likely to happen. And when guns are widespread, like in America, it's much easier to turn into violence. There were 47,000 gun-related deaths in the United States in 2023, while of course most of them were not political. It speaks loudly about the danger of widespread guns like in the US.
Yes, and Eric, a tool that cannot cease to be forgotten in this is social media. Of course, we saw footage of Charlie Kirk spiraling around the likes of X and Reddit and other social media forums. It also has been there with people expressing their views. Possibly you can see it as stoking the partisan divide in America. How do you think long-term social media is going to impact the political fallout of this incident?
Because the great irony of this incident is that Charlie Kirk was the great defender of guns in America. He even argued that the price of school shootings, etc., at the end of the day was a price America would have to accept to defend the right for everyone to carry a weapon. So he was a very divisive figure. He attacked minorities like blacks and Jews and others, and he supported guns, which at the end of the day very easily turn into gun violence. None of this is an excuse for this heinous attack, but it's a background for the situation. And I think the US is now in a vicious circle. It can even be worse. Let's assume that there were some left-wing activists who committed this crime. Well, you can see right-wing people jumping to act, to fight back. And it's very hard to see how it will stop. And of course, social media is amplifying this because everyone is speaking just to their own crowd. You get applause from your own crowd when you speak very strongly, rather than trying to bring people together. Look into what Americans have to have together in common. They are focusing on the divides.
And Eric, finally, of course, you've mentioned that Charlie Kirk was a huge supporter of gun rights in America. However, when incidents like this have happened previously in other countries, we've seen legislation be brought in. Now, guns in America are done on a state-to-state basis when it comes to their laws. However, everyone does have the right to carry a firearm under the Second Amendment. Do you see any kind of legalities or reforms coming in? Not, of course, maybe not at a federal level, but maybe on Utah's level after this very public incident here?
There is unfortunately every reason to be pessimistic, because even the most horrible school shootings where 20 or more children have been killed has not led to any major initiatives to make it more difficult to carry weapons in the United States. Then attacks have happened in other parts of the world, like in Australia. Even the Conservatives took the lead in implementing stricter gun laws. Of course, there is no one in Europe, in India, in China, or in any other nation in the world who claim that it's a right to carry a weapon. I was with a taxi driver in the Texas city of San Antonio. He told me he had 13 weapons. He had just given a new weapon to his girlfriend. This is very dangerous because then small incidents may turn into big affairs. It's much more easy to kill people with guns than with any other method. So curbing the guns in American society is a critical issue, but there is no political support for that, at least not from the Republican Party at the moment. And it's the mix of very inflammatory speech on social media, economic and racial anxiety in society, and the widespread guns is a mix which is simply dangerous. Fortunately, we don't have the same mix in most other parts of the world. So this is an American problem. I mean, nearly all school shootings in the world is happening in one country alone, that's in the United States. But we can only hope that Americans can come together to find policies which will reduce the chance of more violence in the future.
Yes, Erik Solheim, thank you very much for joining us and speaking to us on the broadcast. We are, of course, covering the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We have just heard from an FBI briefing. We know that the suspect is college age and authorities have found a gun, a high-powered rifle. That's what they have said in the press conference we have just watched. John Rosamondo joins us now. He is the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst, and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. John, a huge day, an unprecedented attack that we all saw in front of hundreds of people occur. What are you? I'm unsure if you watched the press conference. However, what have you made of the announcements that they have made? Is that yes, there was in fact a shooter on that roof, and that the shooter is expected to, is of college age, and they used a high-powered bolt-action rifle, and also the fact that the authorities are still pleading for evidence from the public in order to aid them in this investigation?
Well, based on the angle of attack, the precision, I mean, the shooter shot Charlie Kirk in the carotid artery, which leads to death almost instantly. The talk among the people who I talked to say that they believe it was a professional hit. And this bolt-action rifle is something that's kind of like new. We haven't seen something like this in a long time.
John, what's your thought of the political fallout that's going to occur here? Of course, Donald Trump, a huge ally of Kirk's, and Kirk a huge supporter of Donald Trump and his presidential campaign. Kirk put a lot of backing in regards to his social media campaigns when it came to the 2024 election, and has been a vocal supporter of the investigation into the death of Charlie Kirk. However, now we move over to Europe, where Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky met Finland's President Stubb in Kyiv for substantive talks on security and Russian sanctions. Zelensky suggested that Russia may have targeted Poland to block new air defences and called for long-range weapons from the US if Moscow rejects a ceasefire. He urged Kyiv's allies to rethink their air defense capabilities after Russian drones entered Polish airspace, saying Ukraine is open and ready to support their efforts. Let's take a listen in.
На жаль, навіть після вчорашніх подій, вчорашніх ударів дронів, по Польщі, після багатьох гібридних атак Росії проти європейських країн та після багатьох масованих атак проти України немає дійсно сильних таких відчутних кроків у відповідь Росії, які примусили би Росію до миру.
Stubb agreed that Europe must reduce dependence on Russian oil and gas, accusing Hungary and Slovakia of funding the Kremlin's war machine through their purchases. He described Russia's drone crossing into Poland as an attempt to escalate tensions with NATO and warned Moscow will continue to test Western responses. Here is what he had to say.
To us, it seems like Russia is seeking escalation in this war. And we have seen examples of that yesterday. So what we saw yesterday will have a wider impact on Europe. Russian drones violated Poland's territorial integrity in a way that we have not yet seen during Russia's war of aggression here in Ukraine, whether it's in the air, sea, or on land. We continue to develop our own planning, and of course drones is a big part of this. The President of the European Commission has spoken of a wall of drones on the eastern flank, but obviously that is only one part of what we are doing.
Zelensky said Polish military representatives will visit Ukraine to receive training on countering drone attacks, with Ukraine sharing its experience using both foreign and domestic air defence systems. EU Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen said that the EU's planned phase-out of Russian energy is ambitious. He reaffirmed the need for more US LNG imports and said pressure on Russia must be increased. We are now joined by our guest, Yulia Sirko. She's a member of parliament and she joins us live from Kyiv in Ukraine. Thank you very much, Yulia, for joining us on the program. Let's unpack a bit about what Zelensky said in his statements. The issue of sanctions, of course, has been very, very prominent since this war began. Zelensky has said that European sanctions aren't going far enough and that they need to stop buying Russian oil, mainly citing that of Hungary and Slovakia. What are your thoughts, Yulia, on how Europe can do more in this conflict to support Ukraine?
Hello from Kyiv. And first of all, I would like to say it's not only about sanctions. Sanctions is very much important. To stop financing the Russian war against Ukraine, because you know that the Russian budget heavily dependent on oil and gas and other resources, which they're selling to many countries in Europe, in China mostly, and in India as well. So basically, sanctions are very important, but it's also important to understand that yesterday Russia purposely, we think it was done purposely violate the airspace of the European Union and NATO country, Poland. They sent 19 drones, and only 4 drones were landed by Air Force of Poland and NATO. So it's a very low amount of, I would say, of success, because in Ukraine we have at least 50 to 70% drones that we are hitting, Russian drones we are hitting during the attacks. So Poland and NATO country, they are still far behind in the military development in the modern war. So sanctions are very important against Russia to stop the budget machine, financing machine, but also Europe should understand that they need to be prepared for the modern war, including training, drones attacks, and hybrid war, which actually Russia started yesterday. They are not, unfortunately, as you can see, they actually struck only 4 drones out of 19, which is very low amount. And these drones, Russian drone, they penetrated very far inside the European continent, almost to the Baltic Sea.
Yes, and Yulia, Stubb warned that Moscow is going to keep testing Western responses. Do you think Europe, you spoke about this briefly, but do you think Europe is prepared for a long war of endurance?
No, I don't think so. They are still, in general, European nations still do not believe in that war will come to their continent, not to the continent, but their countries. They still think that Ukraine is the only target for Russia, which is a very wrong approach, because the ambitions of Russian elites and Kremlin elites are far behind, far more than only Ukraine. They openly saying they want to target Poland, Baltics, and even other European nations. So, but somehow Europeans are very naive, and politicians are not saying truth to their nations. So I think European nations is in danger, and I think Russia can start the war against the Europe and NATO countries without acquiring or without occupying Ukraine. So they can go through Poland, through Belarus to Poland or to other Baltic countries, and actually in this way to start the war and test NATO and European Union. And they already started it yesterday. As you know, it will be a very big military training, joint training between Belarus and Russia in a few weeks. And I think, and maybe you remember, maybe not, but the invasion, full-scale invasion to Ukraine started from the military training of Russia on the territory of Belarus and on Russia. So they actually prepared before invasion by military training, and they then decided to invade Ukraine in full-scale invasion in 2022. So this could be the same scenario for European countries, and they should be prepared. But unfortunately, they are very far behind this preparedness, awareness, and protection of the civilians.
Yulia Sirko, please stay with us. We have a related development to discuss. In a high-profile meeting in Minsk, President Donald Trump's representative, John Cole, has informed Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko that the United States is lifting sanctions on the state airline Belavia. The move now allows the carrier to service and purchase parts for its fleet. Cole, who has delivered a letter from President Trump signed Donald, said the decision followed productive calls between the two leaders. He has further stressed that President Trump personally ordered the sanctions removal. Let's listen in to what he said during the meeting.
We have to also recognize
Необходимо, разумеется, иметь в виду, что произошел очень важный телефонный разговор, когда президент Трамп позвонил вам из своего президентского самолета по пути на Аляску. Очень продуктивный, очень хороший разговор, после которого он поручил мне перезвонить вам еще раз, что я и сделал. Но я хочу совершенно официально сейчас здесь заявить, что мы сняли санкции с Белавия. Это официально. У меня была встреча с президентом Трампом, в которой участвовали еще несколько десятков человек. Это решение, которое было принято президентом, который сказал, сделайте это немедленно в отношении Беларуси. И сейчас это решение, которое уже утверждено, принято всеми соответствующими министерствами и ведомствами, которые вовлечены в эту работу. И Госдепартамент, и Министерство торговли, и Министерство финансов, и остальные организации, которые в это вовлечены. Это решение принято.
Lukashenko also responded positively, saying that he was ready to discuss the release of prisoners. In his remarks, Lukashenko said he is willing to release all of the prisoners if President Trump requests it, adding that his main task is to stand with the US leader and help establish peace. We're once again joined by Yulia Sirko to discuss this further. Yulia, of course, Belarus and Russia are huge and close allies. How do you view Washington's decision to lift sanctions on Belarus's state airline, Belavia, and also the relationship between President Trump and Alexander Lukashenko?
I think Trump is making the same mistake he made with Putin in Alaska. So he is trying to buy loyalty of these two people, but I think it's a no-go. Actually, there is no way out of this because Belarus and Russia already de facto is one country. Russia placed a lot of military bases on the territory of Russia, including long-range weapon and very dangerous weapon like Oreshnik. And actually, I don't think that you can buy loyalty of Lukashenko this way. They badly need this lifting of these sanctions because they cannot operate their fleet, air fleet, because actually they don't have spare parts. They cannot maintain their fleet, etc., etc. But I mean, it will probably it's a step how to prevent permission of Belarus president to go through the Belarus, for example, to Poland or to Baltics by Russian military forces. Maybe it's somehow exchange, so to say. This is my suggestions. I don't know, but still, I think there will be no results. As well as with Putin in Alaska, you're just wasting your time because obviously these people are all together, and these including China and North Korea and Iran. So they have this authoritarian club, and most probably you will not able to split it. So if Russia will decide to invade them, Baltics or Poland, they physically will need to go through the Belarus, and Belarus, will need to issue not formal but permission to go through their territory. Maybe it's one of the bargaining point with Lukashenko, but let's see how it will be developed. But again, without heavily preparation of European nations for the full-scale war and invasion, they will not able to sustain Russian army.
Yes, Yulia Sirko, thank you very much for joining us here on the broadcast and taking the time. We now move on and over to the United States, where Donald Trump is attending a 9/11 observance ceremony held at the Pentagon to mark the 24th anniversary of September the 11th, 2001 attacks on the United States. Let's take a look.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Before we begin, let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk have felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd, very, very big. Thank you, my fellow Americans. 84 years ago this morning, the banks of the Potomac were filled with the clamor of construction workers who broke ground on the building now known as the Pentagon on September 11th, 1941. At the time, it was the biggest building ever built. From that moment forward, this structure stood as a monument to American strength, power, and cherished American freedom. Exactly 6 decades later, on September 11th, 2001, those same walls, built with the sweat and muscle, blood of our parents and grandparents, were scarred by flame and shaken by terror as our country came face to face with pure evil. On that fateful day, savage monsters attacked the very symbols of our civilization. Yet here in Virginia and in New York and in the skies over Pennsylvania, Americans did not hesitate. They stood on their feet and they showed the world that we will never yield, we will never bend, we will never give up, and our great American flag will never, ever fail. That terrible morning 24 years ago, time itself stood still. The laughter of school children fell silent. The rush of our traffic came to an absolute halt. And for 2,977 innocent souls and their families, the entire world came crashing down so suddenly. In the quarter of a century since those acts of mass murder, 9/11 family members have felt the weight of missed birthdays and empty bedrooms, journals left unfinished, and dreams left unfulfilled. To every member that still feels a void every day of your lives, the First Lady and I unite with you in sorrow. And today, as one nation, we renew our sacred vow that we will never forget September 11th, 2001. Amid the horror of that morning, some used cell phones and office lines to whisper their final words to those who mattered most. They whispered indeed. At 8:59 a.m. aboard United Flight 175, Brian Sweeney called his wife, Julie. He told her, "Do good, go have good times. I totally love you. I'll see you again. I'll meet you up there." 4 minutes later, his plane hit the south tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:12 a.m. aboard American Airlines Flight 77, Renee May called her mom. Just the day before, Renee had learned that she was 7 weeks pregnant, but she never got the chance to share the news. She simply said, "I love you, Mom." 25 minutes later, Renee's plane struck the Pentagon. So violent, a strike it was. At 9:53 a.m. aboard United Flight 93, Elizabeth Waineo called her stepmom. They're getting ready to break into the cockpit. What do? I love you so much. They're going to break in. 10 minutes later, Flight 93 ended in the hallowed field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. At 10:25 a.m., Tom McGinnis was trapped on the 92nd floor of the North Tower when he told his wonderful wife, Elena, on the phone, "There are people jumping from the floors above us. If we get out of here, it'll be a total miracle. I love you, darling. Take care of Caitlin, beautiful daughter." 3 minutes later, the tower fell. Out of the ash, we witnessed the awesome power of that incredible love. We've seen it rise again. Out of the wreckage, we watched unbelievable courage suddenly take form. And out of the darkness, we saw the timeless truth of American character shine for the world to see. In America, we take blows, but we never buckle. We bleed, but we do not bow. And we defy the fear, endure the flames, and emerge from the crucible of every hardship stronger, prouder, and greater than ever before. Last year, we were a dead country. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. In New York, there were heroes like Chuck Costello, a 46-year-old elevator mechanic, and a member of the Knights of Columbus. He selflessly ran into the World Trade Center to free people trapped in the elevators. His body was not found until the following January, deep under the debris. While going through his belongings, Chuck's widow, Mary, a phenomenal woman, discovered a personal prayer written in his own words, "Help me to light the way for those in the dark, and when I enter the darkness, let me not panic, but patiently wait to remember the light." Beautiful words. When the time came, Chuck ran boldly into the darkness of hell on earth, and now he shines in the light of heaven above. We remember him this morning. That day we learned that the American heroic spirit was all around us. We saw it in the police officers, the great firefighters, the service members here at the Pentagon, and in the hearts of every American who answered history's call. One such hero was Army Sergeant First Class Steve Workman, who was on the edge of the impact zone when this incredible Pentagon was hit. He was right there. After leading hundreds of people to escape routes, Steve turned back and plunged into the inferno itself. pushing through the debris he came upon a severely burned Navy lieutenant, the only survivor from the Navy Command Center. Only one. The wounded lieutenant looked into Steve's soul and said, "Don't let me die." Steve replied, "I won't. I've got you. Just hang on." He wheeled the lieutenant out of the wreckage on the back of a maintenance cart before getting in the ambulance and taking him to Walter Reed Hospital. That man Steve saved, Lieutenant Kevin Schaefer, went on to join the elite team of CIA operatives who located Osama bin Laden. Steve, you're an American hero. We appreciate it. We appreciate what you've gone through. Please stand. Please stand. Where are you? Oh, good-looking man. You're a good-looking guy. You remember that day. You remember that day. Good. Thank you very much, Steve. That was something. That was something. In the years that followed, America's warriors avenged our fallen and sent an unmistakable message to every enemy around the world. If you attack the United States of America, we will hunt you down and we will find you. We'll go all over this sometimes magnificent earth. We will crush you without mercy and we will triumph without question. That's why we named the former Department of Defense the Department of War. It will be different. We won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to change the name. Well, now we have it back to where we all want it. Everybody wanted it. Everybody is so happy to have it back. You will fail and America will win, win, win. The enemy will always fail. 24 years have passed since that Tuesday morning in September, and an entire generation of Americans have come of age in a totally different world. While they cannot remember the agony of that day, they are carrying on the legacy of those who lost. Around 8:30 a.m. on the morning of the attacks, Army Lieutenant Colonel Kip Taylor sent an email to his friends and family describing the joys of fatherhood and his excitement for the upcoming birth of his unborn son. He wrote, "After you have kids, there are days that you just get going and you say, 'Hi, honey, I'm home.' What we do until that moment pales in comparison, but just that little statement, 'Hi, honey,' so American, so beautiful. But that's really the point of it all, isn't it?" An hour after he sent that email, Flight 77 flew into Colonel Taylor's Pentagon office and claimed the life of a very proud father and true patriot. 6 weeks later, on October 25th, 2001, Colonel Taylor's son, Luke, was born. Luke then tragically lost his mom to cancer when he was just 2 years old, leaving him to be raised by his father's brother. As a young boy, Luke asked his uncle about the folded flag on the bookshelf, and when he learned about his dad's decades of devotion to the Army and the horrors of September 11th, that's when he learned. Luke carried that memory with him and joined the ROTC as a college freshman. He graduated just last year, and I'm pleased to say he is with us today as a second lieutenant and doing very well. He's rising quickly in the infantry, preparing for Army Ranger School. The spitting image of his dad, they say. Luke says that every time he puts on a uniform, he feels connected to his father and to our country. But it was a father he never knew. Luke, your parents are together in heaven, and they could not be prouder of the man that they have produced. They produced you. Those two great people produced you. Luke, please stand. Thank you, Luke. You look good, Luke. You look good. They're looking down on you. They're very proud. This morning, we recall the light of America's best and bravest and the love that they showed in their final moments. In their memory, we make a solemn pledge and a noble promise. We will honor always our great heroes, and you are our heroes.
Okay, there we hear the US President speak inside the Pentagon walls in New York on the 24th anniversary of 9/11. We're now joined by Adit Kothari, who's a foreign affairs expert, and he joins us live from London. To discuss this further, Adit, we've just heard the President talk about many instances and how that tragedy affected people from throughout the United States. Of course, 24 years. How, if you can, tell us about how that one day in United States history changed everything when it came to the security, not just in the United States, but around the world?
I think the one obvious thing that changed from that day onwards is something that had been going on for generations and decades, and which countries like India had been inflicted by. And India had been crying out for decades again, saying that, Islamic Jihad and Islamic, terrorism is a concern, just not for the Indian subcontinent, but for the world at large. But somehow, the West was absolutely undeterred by that opinion, and it opened their eyes to a great degree. It made them realize that if you keep feeding the snake, eventually the snake will come and bite your hand. And from that day onwards, the towards Muslim Brotherhood, the towards Taliban, an organization that was created by the West. And they saw the flaw in creating such proxies. The question is whether the West understands the gravity of their mistakes. I don't think they fully comprehend even to date. Some way or the other, they still continue to play with fire. I mean, we've seen President Trump still sit down on the dinner table with the greatest sponsor of cross-border terrorism and asymmetrical warfare, the General Asad Munir from Pakistan. So the question is, have the West truly understood, they truly acknowledge of what the consequences of feeding to Islamic terrorism is? My answer would be no. They're still marred with political correctness, and they still think that using these people as proxies can yield or has some benefits for the West. Josh.
Yes, and Adit, just your final thoughts on how Donald Trump puts this into his perspective, and how he kind of has how things have moved since that day when George Bush was in charge, and the two towers were struck, along with the Pentagon, of course, and how that has been pulled into the common narrative of American politics, and how it affects society in the United States today.
So, the irony is, and this is something Charlie Kirk spoke very often about, especially when Zohran Mamdani was elected as the leader for the Democrats. And he said that, New York was that city which was impacted by the 9/11 terror attacks. And this was predominantly a sort of an Islamic jihad towards the Americans. And today, tables have shifted, and the irony is that you're now electing a mayoral candidate which actually endorses and appropriates, that sort of politics. So then again, the first, from 99 onwards, there was a lot of towards Muslim Brotherhood, but then, they've understood how to appropriatize the politics around it. They've used academia, they've used journalism, they've used mainstream media to basically create a false notion against Islamophobia, and that is where they are winning the war, and the civil society at large is losing the war.
Yes, Adit Kothari, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Pleasure talking to you as always. Well, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.
ITV network